I welcomed her into my home, but I never imagined she would become part of the secret that changed my family forever. Africa was already speaking. Our grandparents gathered beside fires. They passed down wisdom. These are not just stories, this is echoes of African truth.
The maid I pitied stole my husband, my house, and my inheritance in one night. She was barefoot, starving, and standing in the rain outside my gate. I gave her shelter. I gave her food. I gave her a job. And on the night I buried my mother, she took everything I had left in this world. My husband, my house, and the inheritance my mother died trying to protect. But here is the part that will disturb you. She did not do it alone, and the person who helped her was someone I trusted even more than her. If you are the kind of person who believes no good deed goes unpunished, stay with me. And if you are new here, please subscribe, because the stories on this channel will make you question everything you think you know about the people closest to you. My name is Omolola, and I want to start from the very beginning, because if I skip any part, you will not understand how deep the betrayal goes. I grew up in Ibadan, in a compound house that smelt of egusi and old wood. My mother, Mama Titi, was not a rich woman, but she was a woman of property. She owned land, 3 plots in Bodija that her own father had left her, and a house on the edge of Agodi that she had built brick by brick with the proceeds from her fabric trade. She was not educated beyond primary school, but she understood one thing that many professors do not. Land does not run away. My father died when I was 9. After that, it was just the 2 of us. Mama Titi sold asoke at the market, woke before the sun every morning, and made sure I finished university. I studied business administration at UI. When I graduated, she cried so hard that her head tie fell off in the middle of the hall, and she did not even notice. She just kept crying and clapping. I got a job at a logistics company in Lagos. I moved. I visited every month, sometimes twice, and by the time I was 28, I had met and married Kayode. Now, Kayode. I need you to understand who Kayode was when I married him, because who he became is a different story entirely. When I met Kayode Adewale, he was charming in that quiet, steady way that you do not immediately trust, but eventually fall for completely. He was not flashy. He did not chase women openly. He worked as an engineer in a construction firm, wore the same 3 pairs of shoes for 2 years, and called my mother Mama with so much warmth that she said, and I remember this clearly, she said, "Lola, this one is a good man. Keep him." I kept him. We married in 2016. A small wedding, nothing extravagant. We rented a flat in Surulere and began our life together. It was not perfect, but it was ours. We had arguments about money, about children, about the fact that he sometimes disappeared on weekends with vague explanations. But I loved him, and I believed he loved me. Then came Ronke. Now, I did not go looking for Ronke. She found me the way disaster always finds you, at the worst moment, wrapped in something that looks like mercy. It was a Saturday morning in November. I had driven to the market on Ojuelegba Road, and on my way back, I passed a girl sitting on the pavement beside a dry gutter. She could not have been more than 19. She was wearing a faded Ankara dress that had been washed so many times, it had lost all memory of its original color. She had a small nylon bag beside her, and she was not begging. She was just sitting, staring at nothing, with the kind of stillness that comes from a person who has run out of options. I drove past her. Then I stopped. I do not know what made me stop. Maybe it was the way she was not crying. People who truly hit rock bottom sometimes stop crying. The tears run out, and something about that silence pulled at me. I reversed. I rolled down my window. I asked her what happened. She told me her name was Ronke. She said she had come from Ogbomosho to find her aunt in Lagos, but the aunt had moved without telling her. She had no money, no phone, no address. She had been sitting there since the previous evening. I gave her food. Then I gave her a place to stay for a few days. Then, because my domestic help had just left me to get married, I offered Ronke the position. She accepted with both hands, tears on her face, gratitude pouring out of her like a river. I should have paid attention to rivers. They always go somewhere. Ronke moved in, and within 2 weeks, she had made herself indispensable. She cooked, she cleaned, she organized my kitchen the way I never could. She was quiet, efficient, and almost invisible. The kind of house help that you forget is there until everything is running smoothly and you realize it is because of her. Kayode liked her immediately. He said she was respectful. He said she was a hard worker. He said I had done a good thing by helping her. I remember feeling proud of myself. But here is what I did not notice at first because I was not looking. When Kayode came home late and I was already in bed, it was Ronke who brought his food to the table and waited in the kitchen while he ate. When he had a bad day and sat in the parlor in silence, it was Ronke who seemed to know exactly when to appear with cold water and exactly when to disappear. They had a rhythm together that I had not taught them. I noticed it in small flashes, a look that ended too quickly, a sentence that stopped when I entered the room, Kayode laughing at something in the kitchen that went quiet the moment I appeared. I told myself I was imagining things. I was stressed. My mother was sick. Yes, in the middle of all this, Mama Titi had fallen ill. It started as fatigue. Then it became something more serious. The hospital in Ibadan said it was her kidneys. She needed dialysis. She needed money. I began sending everything I had and then some. Kayode contributed, reluctantly, and less each month with excuses that became more elaborate as time passed. But I held us together. I held everything together. I was exhausted in a way that sleep could not fix, and that exhaustion made me blind. Now, here is where the story shifts, and I need you to pay attention because this is the part that changes everything. About 4 months after Ronke came to live with us, my mother called me. It was a Tuesday evening. She sounded weak but clear. She said, "Lola, come this weekend. I need to show you something." I asked what it was. She said, "The papers for the land. I want to put everything in your name before..." She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. I told her I would come Friday evening. On Wednesday, I noticed Kayode on his phone for a long time in the bathroom. I did not think much of it. On Thursday, he told me he had a work emergency and might need to travel to Abuja on Friday. I said fine, I would go to Ibadan alone. On Friday morning, I packed a small bag. I hugged Kayode at the door. I told Ronke to make sure the house was clean by Saturday. She nodded with her eyes down, the way she always did. I drove to Ibadan. When I arrived at my mother's house, she was in bed, but sitting up. She looked smaller than I remembered, but her eyes were sharp. She held my hand, and for 2 hours she talked to me about the land, about the house, about a lawyer named Baba Sheung in Bodija who had been keeping documents for her. She said she had already updated her will. Everything was going to me. She said, "Lola, no matter what happens, that land is your future. Do not let anyone take it from you." I told her nothing would happen. She died 4 days later. I got the call on Tuesday morning. I dropped everything and drove back to Ibadan. I was crying before I even left Lagos. The grief hit me like something physical, like a wall you do not see until your face is already against it. I called Kayode. He picked on the third ring. He said the right things. He said he would come that evening. He did not come. He sent a message at 9 p.m. saying he was stuck. He said he would come the next day. He did not come the next day either. I buried my mother on Thursday with my aunties and cousins and neighbors and the women from her church. I stood at that graveside with no husband beside me, holding myself together with both hands. When I finally got back to Lagos on Sunday evening, the house was quiet. Too quiet. And now we have reached it, the night everything collapsed. I pushed open the front door and something felt wrong immediately. The parlor was different. Things had been moved. The small side table where I kept my reading glasses was gone. The framed photo of our wedding, the one that had been on the wall since we moved in, was gone too. I stood there for a moment, confused rather than afraid. Then I walked to the bedroom. The wardrobe was open. Kayode's side was empty. Not messy empty, not I traveled in a hurry empty. Deliberately, carefully, completely empty. Every shirt, every shoe, every document he kept on the upper shelf. My heart did not race. My hands did not shake. I went completely still, the way my mother used to go still when something was very wrong. I walked back through the house slowly, room by room. Ronke's room, empty. Her mattress was still there, but everything else, her bag, her few clothes, her small mirror, gone. I stood in the middle of my own sitting room and I understood. Not the full picture yet, but enough. I understood that the two people I had trusted most in that house had left together. I just didn't know the rest. I called Kayode. No answer. I called again. Switched off. I called a neighbor, Sister Fumi, from downstairs. She came up immediately, and when she saw my face, she sat me down and gave me water and told me what she had seen. On Saturday, while I was still in Ibadan burying my mother, a van had come to the house. Kayode was there. Ronke was there. They packed the van slowly and carefully over several hours. Sister Fumi said she had assumed it was a delivery issue, something being returned. She said Kayode had waved at her and smiled when she looked out her window. He had smiled. I sat with that for a long moment. Then my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I picked it up. It was Baba Sheon, the lawyer, my mother's lawyer. He said, "Mrs. Adewale, I have been trying to reach you. There is something very urgent. Someone came to my office on Thursday, claiming to be acting on your behalf. They said you sent them to collect your mother's documents and the transfer papers for the Golddigger land." My blood went cold. I said, "I sent no one." There was a pause, longer this time. He said, "The person had a letter. It had your signature, or something that looked like your signature." I asked what the person looked like. He described a man, well-dressed, spoke with authority, said his name was Segun, and that he was your husband's cousin. Kayode did not have a cousin named Segun. I said, "Did you give them the documents?" Another pause, longer this time. He said, "I gave them copies, not the originals. But Mrs. Adewale, the originals are missing from my safe. My office was broken into last Wednesday night. I thought it was a random robbery because nothing else was taken. But now I am not so sure." Wednesday night. The night Kayode was on his phone in the bathroom for a very long time. If you are still watching, and I need you to stay with me because we are not done yet, please subscribe right now, because what I am about to tell you next is the part that broke me completely. It was not Kayode's betrayal. It was not Ronke. It was the third person, the one I had not suspected at all. I spent 2 days making calls. I called Kayode's family. His mother said she did not know where he was. His brother, his own brother, Kunle, said he had not spoken to Kayode in months. Then Kunle said something strange. He said, "Lola, I need to tell you something. I have been wanting to tell you for a long time, but Kayode threatened me." I asked what he meant. He said that over a year ago, Kayode had come to him with a plan. Kayode had found out from me, from a casual conversation, from one of those evenings when I talked too freely about my mother's land and its value, that the Bodija plots were worth significant money. Prime location. Developers had been approaching my mother for years. She had refused to sell. Kayode had decided that if he could get those documents, and if he could get my mother's signature, or a good forgery, he could complete a sale and disappear before anyone noticed. But he needed help. And the help he found was Ronke. Not the Ronke I picked up off the street. The real Ronke, the one who had been placed on that pavement deliberately, who had been given a worn dress and a rehearsed story and told to wait for a certain kind of woman, a woman who would stop, a woman who would feel responsible. Ronke was not a stranger. Ronke was from Kayode's neighborhood in Ogmoshan. They had grown up on the same street. She was his arrangement, his eyes and ears in my house for every conversation I had, every phone call he could not hear, every trip I planned. The day I told him I was going to Ibadan to see my mother about the documents, that was the day everything was activated. He arranged the lawyer's office break-in. He arranged for someone to go to Baba Seun with the forged letter. He had Ronke distract me, keep me calm, make sure nothing seemed off that Friday morning when I left. And while I sat beside my dying mother, while I held her hand and listened to her talk about protecting my future, Kayode was already stealing it. I went to the police. I am going to be honest with you, it was not a smooth process. It took effort and follow-up and the help of a lawyer I found through my auntie's connection. But eventually, things began to move. Kayode was traced to Port Harcourt. He had rented a flat there. Ronke was with him. They had not yet managed to complete the land transaction because Baba Seun, to his credit, had flagged it with the State Land Registry the moment he suspected something was wrong. The originals were recovered. The plots remained in my name. Kayode was arrested. Ronke was arrested. At the station, when I saw her, when I looked at Ronke's face for the first time since all of this unraveled, I expected to feel rage. But what I felt was something quieter. Something sadder. I had genuinely pitied this girl. I had looked at her sitting in the rain and felt something in my chest move toward her. And she had felt that. She had counted on it. She did not look at me when they brought her in. She kept her eyes on the floor. And I do not know if that was shame or training or simply the habit of a person who has learned to survive by making themselves small. I did not speak to her. There was nothing left to say. What happened to the house? We had been renting in Surulere. Kayode had stopped paying the landlord for 3 months before he left. I was locked out of my own tenancy because of debt I did not know existed. I went to stay with Sister Fumi for 6 weeks while I sorted it out. Those 6 weeks were the hardest of my life. The grief for my mother had not gone anywhere. The shock of Kayode had not gone anywhere. I was sleeping on a borrowed mattress in someone's storeroom and going to work every morning in the same 3 outfits, rotating them and washing by hand at night. I will not pretend I held it together perfectly. I did not. There were nights I sat on that mattress and asked every question there is to ask. What did I miss? Where did I go wrong? Was there something in Kayode's eyes the day we married that I chose not to see? Was my loneliness so loud that I rushed into trust the way a hungry person rushes food and chokes? I asked all of it. And then slowly, I began to answer. I had not been foolish. I had been human. There's a difference. Kayode had planned this carefully. Ronke had been placed in my life deliberately. They had exploited not my weakness, but my capacity for compassion, and those are not the same thing. The compassion was not the mistake. The mistake was thinking that everyone who receives it deserves it, that openness and generosity automatically creates safety. They do not. And learning that lesson at 31, in a storeroom with nothing but what I could carry, was the most painful education of my life. But I survived it. My mother's land is now mine, officially and completely. The Bodija plots are under development. I agreed to a partnership with a reputable firm. The Agodi house, which she had transferred to my name before she died, is rented out. The income is modest, but it is mine. I have moved to a new flat. I am not at peace every day, but I am building something, steadily, brick by brick, the way Mama Titi taught me. Kayode is awaiting trial. His lawyer has been negotiating. I have been told there will likely be a plea agreement. I do not know how I feel about that. I know that whatever sentence he receives will not give me back the days I lost beside my mother's sick bed, wondering why my husband could not come. Ronke, I heard she was released on bail. I heard she went back to Obomosho. I do not know what her life looks like now. I try not to think about it. But occasionally, late at night, I do think about that girl on the pavement in the rain. I think about how perfectly she performed helplessness. And I wonder, underneath the performance, underneath everything Kayode had trained her to do, was there something real? Was there a moment in my kitchen, watching me grieve, where she felt something that was not part of the plan? I do not know. I will never know. And maybe that's the part of this story that will stay with me longest. Not the land, not Kayode, but Ronke, and the question of whether the person I pitied actually existed. My mother used to say, Lola, help people with your left hand, but keep your right hand free. You will need it. I did not understand what she meant when I was young. I thought she was being selfish, guarded, unfair to people who needed help. Now I understand. She was not saying do not help. She was saying do not give away everything you are in the act of helping. Do not let your pity become your blindness. Do not confuse a person's need with their character. Need is something that happens to people. Character is something they choose. Ronke needed help. That was real. But her character, what she chose to do, what she agreed to, how many mornings she smiled at my face while planning to take everything I had, that was hers. All hers. I gave her my compassion. She gave me the sharpest lesson of my life. And if you have ever trusted someone completely and found out later that they were never who you thought they were, then you know exactly what kind of silence follows that discovery. Not the silence of emptiness, the silence of rearranging, of having to go back through every memory and see it with new eyes. That rearranging takes time, but it does not destroy you. If anything, it builds you into someone that no one can afford to underestimate. That's the story of Ronke and Kayode and the night I came home to an empty house and a missing inheritance. If this story moved something in you, if it made you think about someone in your life, or a decision you made, or a person you trusted a little too completely, then stay on this channel, because we tell the stories that the world would rather keep quiet. The betrayals inside the kindness, the wolves inside the gratitude, and the women who survive both. Subscribe, leave a comment below telling me, have you ever helped someone who used that help against you? I want to know. I read every single one. And to Mama Titi, wherever you are, your land is still standing, and so am I.
Africa was already speaking. Our grandparents gathered beside fires. They passed down wisdom. These are not just stories, this is echoes of African truth.